this isn't anything like shoved in our face that we can't handle or deal with,
Right.
right? We're ready for this at this point. And then Fallacy would have been like, oh man, are we ready for this? Like,
23 powers, activate!
Watching my dogs just wrestle on this little nanny cam is just too funny now. Awesome. Well, without further ado, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. This is another episode of the Scoped Exposure podcast. We are today welcomed by Tony and Tommy of Calgary's own Trench. Thank you guys for coming on the show today.
hey man,
Dude, thank you
absolute
so much
pleasure.
for having us, dude. This rules.
Yeah, this has been, I think when I was thinking about I always have like a hit list of guests that, especially going into season 2. And I think for Western Canada, people that, that I have way more rapport with versus just like knowing them through a band or something, like you guys were definitely top of mind. And with the new Trench single that just came out and all the New Damage announcements, it was like, okay, now it's time to actually sit down with the Chans and do an interview. So here we are. Very, very exciting.
So yeah,
Thank you so much,
super
man.
stoked, man.
Yeah. So for any of the folks who might be tuning in who don't know you guys, can you just give a quick intro of what you do in the band, and then we'll get into some of the other chats.
Well,
Okay.
yeah, I'm Tony. I play bass and I do backup vocals in Trench.
And I'm Tommy, and I play drums in Trench.
Very, very sick. Yeah, I think the rhythmic dynamic that you guys are bringing to the Trench table, also being twins and having that family dynamic, I think there's a lot of interesting things that we can kind of play on there. But before we get into any of the music chats, we have to check some bevs. It's tradition here on the show for the guests to go first. So, it's funny because I remember when Endgame was recording drums with you guys, we came collect with all the different bevs. You guys seem to have your beverage know-how on lock. So tell the folks at home what you're going to be checking for the show.
I mean, I got kind of two things going on here. I got this Yeti big bottle of just water to keep me hydrated, and then I usually would be drinking some sours and stuff, but I'm gonna keep it kind of mellow with these the little Bud Light.
Yeah, rocking a very Post Malone-esque kind of brew.
Yeah.
Very.
But I'm rocking something more fancy. I'm going Collective Art.
I've had that. That shit is sick. I love that.
Right?
It's a great sour.
Rainbow sherbet, sour, raspberry, pineapple, key lime, and orange puree. The cool thing about this is I feel like you can select what you want to taste as you drink it. Rather than get a mouthful of flavors at once, you're like, whoa! It's if I just want key lime, woo.
Yeah. You've trained your taste buds to turn on and off as far as what you want to taste after each swig. So I really, really appreciate that. So obviously Trench has a very green kind of theme, so I don't think it would be appropriate to check a non-green drink. So I'm going to be checking New Level's Green Demon for the show. Calgary's own. Got to keep it all Calgary for this podcast. But yeah, we're going to be drinking that, which is, for the folks at home, it's a blue raspberry lemonade sour. Definitely one of my go-tos. Most of the time when I'm drinking a beer on the show, it would just come straight out of the can. I'm a big just straight out of the can or bottle kind of drinker versus having it in a glass. But to be able to kind of show it, I think that's kind of important here.
I love the color of that thing.
Yeah, it's just
and it's amazing that they made that thing in slushy form, dude.
Yes,
that's blessed from the beer gods.
Yeah, I think when Scope did our this is a terrible pour, mind you, but I have seen those TikToks recently where it's talking about how to not have any foam, where it's pouring even just a can of Coke upside down, so all the fizz just kind of goes back into the Coke, and then you have a solid kind of pour with no foam. It's very, very. I don't know if you guys have seen that.
I haven't seen TikTok videos, but I definitely seen like bartenders at like craft, like
Right.
the way that where it's like a like you're doing a robot kind of thing.
Totally. Yeah. So yeah, I going back to what you said about the Green Demon slushy, I think it was when we did our 4-year anniversary like pop up. They had it with slushy form, and when it was 25 degrees Celsius in Calgary, when it was like super dry, that was like the go-to. But today is not one of those days. If I'm just looking outside with all the sleet and snow that's outside. So
Yeah.
well, cheers to you guys. Really excited to be doing this episode, and chat. Long overdue, in my opinion.
For sure.
So, guys, you're not the first members of Trench to be here on the podcast. We did an episode with Bryce and Cole, like really, really early on. I think Cole was like episode like 11 or 12, and then Bryce came on right when the pandemic started, so he's in like the 20-ish mark. Now we're like over 150, and now we have you guys on the show, so you're probably aware of how I like to ease into things. So any new guests, I always like to ask like their hardcore origin story, how they got kind of put onto the path of heavy music. So let's start with Tommy. And then we'll, I'm sure there's maybe some parallels with you guys being, family, but, I'm sure there's some individual. How am I blanking on this word right now? I'm sure there's some things that are in your own lane. So, Tommy, let's start with you. Tell me about some of those moments.
Well, pretty much started in junior high. My friend showed me Metallica, and then he was playing drums and I was playing guitar at that time. So that's how I like got into a little bit of heavier stuff. And then my buddy who also played guitar in that band as well, he was like, listening to like Sum 41 and AFI and stuff like that. And like when we got more into AFI, that kind of got us more into like punk stuff. And like I started playing more drums in that sense because everybody wanted to start bands like that. And there weren't really any drummers around. So I was like, okay, I'm down to play. And then eventually high school, it was like the emo phase was super huge at that time, like from first to last, and Yesterday's Rising and the Used and whatnot, like really got into that stuff. And then by grade 12, like someone showed me Azalea Dying, and I like heard 94 Hours, and I was like, dude, that double kick is like insane. It sounds like a helicopter. I was like, what is it? It's like all the heavy stuff I like from like all the other bands, but like more heavy.
Right.
So that's like what got me more into like listening to heavier stuff, and then I got into like metalcore, like August Burns Red, more type stuff like that, just like kind of super techy breakdown stuff or whatever. And that's how I kind of like really got into heavy music now and hardcore, and started going to hardcore shows and like just after high school or maybe at the end of high school. And that's how I like heard about the hardcore scene and everything like that. And
right.
It's like pretty much been like that ever since.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy to have that like very. Oh, was that you guys?
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay.
Yeah,
you're not the first person who's had a call happen mid episode, so you're all good. But it is interesting to kind of see those like really attainable like things that are just off of like alternative music, like you were saying, the Sum 41s and the Rise Against and the Billy Talents and all those kind of things. And it's like very like at that time it was like really, really pushed. And then you kind of go down the rabbit hole a little bit, and then you find the 94 Hours Azalea Dying video on YouTube, and you're like, what? Like I had no idea that drummers or any musicians could play this crazy. So, and then it like opens your mind, like the possibilities of like aggressive music as a whole.
Yeah, that's actually pretty much how we got introduced to hardcore shows. Was like the guy who showed us Azalea Dying. He also played guitar in like a band, in a band called As Estrella Falls. Back when it happens, and he was like, "Oh, come check out this hardcore show." And then all of a sudden, he's like, "If you're into this type of music, like this stuff, but local," we're like, "Okay, let's go check it out." And next thing you know, it's like been a thing since.
Yeah, totally. So let's flip it to the other side of the coin. Like Tony, was it like very similar for you? Did you have an entirely different route? Tell me about that for you.
Yeah, I would say like when I first picked up a bass, and that was because like no one else wanted to play bass. So I was like, okay, I want to be in a band, I'll play bass, whatever. And then it was started off with like Metallica and stuff, but like I appreciate Metallica way more I do now than I did when I first discovered them, because like it was just like, to me, it was just like a radio kind of band, and like you just kind of throw them in that kind of category, but it was still like great songs. The first like heavy song that like kind of changed my life, I guess, was like this girl I kind of liked, she like sent me a From Mom to Ashes song, The Switch.
Okay.
I had to download it on Kazaa. And I remember just like chilling at the computer one day, downloading this song on Kazaa. And as soon as it played, I had no idea what to expect, but it was so heavy that I just literally like out of nowhere just started like headbanging like on the desk. Like it was like, what is this? Like, oh my God. That was high school. And then after the From Mom to Ashes, like that's where I started going to like punk shows at Carpenters Union Hall. Like I saw like Stutterfly there, and like Passato, and like a bunch of like other like kind of pop punky bands like Drive By Punch and stuff. And then that kind of introduced me to like the super, like I go through like these phases. Like I was like super punky then, and then I go to the actual like the scene hardcore shows, and I got the emo cuts and like the Puma shoes all going, like
the big tongues and the DC shoes, all that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So then it was like Tommy said, like once our homie Jesse like showed us like that there's a scene like that, and we started playing those kind of shows, it was like, oh my God, like that's crazy that there's even this kind of music out there. And then that's when you start really digging in, and like when people start showing you music that you've never heard before, that's like probably the greatest gift anyone could possibly do. Because like first time we heard August Burns Red, we're like, me and my brother would just like look at each other and was like, what is this? Like crazy. Next thing you know, we just like complete August Burns Red ripoff,
Yeah, totally.
Want to do was it ABR related, right? So
it's funny that you bring up August Burns Red like ripoff bands, because some bands actually built their entire, or one of their biggest career bands were just like August Burns ripoff bands. Like I think of like Texas in July. I really, really love that band, but it was like, like looking back, it's pretty much an ABR ripoff band at that point, changing up a couple different things.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
But like insane, to all the Texas fans, like don't get it twisted. I'm a big fan of like all the musicians of that band, and they went on to do like even crazier things. Like I think Adam Gray was even on like a late night show doing his like stick flip tricks or whatever. So yeah, I think it is interesting, like you said, to have someone to kind of show you the way, versus just like, oh, this is only on the radio and it's only playing in amphitheaters and things like that. Something that's interesting with both of you, though, is both of your main instruments that you're playing now seem to be out of necessity. Like for Tommy, it was like, oh, no one is playing drums, I'll play drums. And for Tony, it's like, oh, no one's going to play bass, I'll play bass. So why did you have that mindset of just like filling the gap of what you were seeing in the local scene?
Well, when it first started, like Tom got asked to be in a band, and that's where I was like, what? Like, that's so cool. I want to be in a band. And then it's like, is anyone looking for guitarists? Like, no, we already have one. Could use a bassist. And that's where I was like, okay, like just for the sake of wanting to be in a band, like I was willing to pick up the bass, and then picked up my first bass in Vietnam, and then learned like all these Blink songs on Guitar World magazines. And
yeah, so it was just like not a coincidence, but just like a natural thing of like, hey, this is what's needed, and I want to explore this. So like, I'm just gonna be the missing puzzle piece for a lot of these different people that I want to play with.
Yeah,
got you. So let's fast forward a little bit. So like, I think one of the first bands that I started to notice you guys, and this is long before we actually got to meet, and I think it was right around the first time that I actually got to see you guys perform, when it was like Trench's maybe first show or one of your first shows at Southern Alberta Hardcore Fest back in 2016. So a little bit before that, I saw like, The Fallacy was like a band that was really popular at the time, playing with bands like Fallen Archaea, and some of those kind of acts. So tell me about like how that band formed, and you guys like went out and did a number of different things, but like, yeah, break that down for me.
Oh man, that's a while ago. That was a while ago.
So like Fallacy formed basically like, so the very beginning of like me and Tom picking up instruments. Like when I decided to start playing bass and he started playing drums, like the first band that we ever formed was Detached, and that was a high school band.
Okay.
And two members in there that was like Shane, or no, it was just Shane. So he, after Detached broke up with the high school thing, he wanted to keep doing something like on a heavier side. And then that's how we kind of just kept, because we kept playing music during then, and we wanted to kind of stick with us three together. And then so we kind of formed that way.
No, he's talking. You kind of got it mixed up here. It's like, so just after high school, when we started going to hardcore shows, we saw a lot of shows like Ghost Cried Murder, like a bunch of, and like Means. All at that time they were super huge, and we met a bunch of people from going to shows. And then we actually started a band called Beverly Kills. It was like a southern rock hardcore band.
Yeah,
we did one. Yeah, we did like one cross Canada tour after that, and then we broke up. But just after that, that's when we got like introduced to like more metalcore stuff, and we wanted to go into a more metalcore route. Well, at least that's what Tony wanted to start writing.
Mm-hmm.
So he started writing riffs, and then that's kind of how like Fallacy got formed. Was just that like I started writing drums to his riffs, and then guys that we were playing with back in high school, they weren't doing any other band stuff, so they were down to jam with us too.
Mm-hmm.
And we started doing that, and then we did a bunch of tours and across Canada like 3 times or whatever, and got to play some really sweet shows in Calgary with like at like Mac Hall or at the UFC and stuff like that. So
right,
that kind of like went on for almost like at least 5 years or something like that.
Wow. Yeah. It's pretty crazy. The surge. It seemed like Southern rock, kind of like Holly Springs or Maylene, was like it was the top genre, at least in Canada. It felt like at the time, like those bands were just like crushing it. And now I can't literally name any bands who kind of play in that space right now, you know?
Yeah, exactly. It's like Cancer Bats are like the ones that are sticking around that's kind of still doing that type of music, which is cool.
Right. Yeah. I feel like they are probably one of those bands that kind of still fly that flag, but it's, you know, there's no one else to kind of compete with them, it seems.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when it came to, you know, so like clearly you guys have been doing bands for like a long time. So like what was the gap between like the Fallacy and I think you guys were doing a couple of things kind of prior to Trench kind of forming, but like what was the gap of time? And you know, why did you want to continue on? Because I think a lot of people, when they come into metal or hardcore or the scene, if you want to just generalize it, they'll do that. They have like their golden years of like trying to do that in their like early 20s or their late teens, and then they feel like playing in a band at 30 and beyond is like corny, cringy, like it's a young person's game. So I'm kind of curious if you guys could speak to either of those things as far as like, hey, like we might be in a different place in life, but we want to still keep going and doing something.
Yeah, we were kind of like metal music was, because we were doing it for so long and listening for so long, it kind of like you started kind of like want to like explore more options or whatever, like different types of genre. So we were getting more into like indie music and folk music and stuff like that. And then we started like jamming with other bands, or got into other bands that were completely opposite of metal for a while, actually, just because, you know, we were like, well, what's the next thing we want to do or want to try out and stuff, right? And
that also comes with like different music tastes. Like you start changing your musical taste as well. Like instead of like listening to ABR every single day and then you're like trying to write everything that they do, it's like, oh, well, the Beatles, like who are they? And then you know, the Beatles are like insane. And then they're our new favorite band, and everything we wanted to write music wise was like Beatles kind of like related. It's like, wow, it's so much nicer to just write music with chords instead of like all these riffs slapped into like whatever, right?
Totally.
Like,
yeah.
Also, like depending, like during like certain years, like you hang out with different people and then you get introduced to different type of music. Like there were moments that like I grew up didn't like electronic music at all. And then there were moments where, because I was around some people that kept listening to it, and I was like, that's actually not that bad. Like for that song, for, like eventually even country music, like there's like good country, so we were like, wow, that riff is actually really tech.
Yeah,
and
totally. Yeah.
kind of just go home and mess around with that stuff, or maybe like try to make it metal or something like that. But it's cool. Like the experience in life leads you to different experience, like music genres or whatever. And then that kind of, in the end, now especially, like helps us write a lot, like really open to like writing with like, oh, why don't we try this country like lead riff over something like heavy, or like you think of stuff like that after like listening to different types of music all the time, and like experiencing different, like going to different festivals with different types of music. It all like adds up in the end, which helps a lot with,
it changes the way you write and looks at, like, you can appreciate everything that you used to didn't like, and like there is good in a little bit of everything, and like after experiencing all that, when you go back into a jam space with whoever, your mindset is completely different. And I think it's actually allows you to open up more doors in your writing, instead of like, it needs to be only heavy, there needs to be a minimum 7 breakdowns, or like, I don't know. It's instead, it's like, what happened if there's no riff that stays the same, or what happened if we do just write like a ABC, AB kind of song structure and stuff, right? Like,
yeah,
so I think it's to like diverse for music.
Yeah, I think a lot of people only think of it in this space where it's like, if you don't listen to heavy music, you're gonna like not love heavy music in the future. But like it's so clear that, like, Tommy, for you, it's like, not too long ago in the entirety of your life, you're like, I'm not really into electronic music, but like going down the rabbit hole a little bit for you now, like Trench, that's like almost like a pivotal characteristic of your guys' music, having those like samples and just like electronic interludes into the other songs. And I totally agree with both of you. I think that there's good music in every single subgenre. It's just taking the time to actually like go, like, I'm not the biggest country fan, but I have like maybe one or two that I can actually be like, okay, like I can actually get behind this. And I think it's a matter of like being uncomfortable in like, because like I don't expect every single person in the world to love or understand what hardcore is, but like the few people that can actually like sit down and listen to it and like process it over time, they could, there's a reason that so many people now can like really fuck with like the new Turnstile record, because it's like there's translation points, versus like I'm not expecting those same people to go and like love the new Regional Justice Center album that came out. So I think there's like some of those things where it's like good music exists in any subgenre. It's just a matter of like, are you willing to like be in that like space of unknown and like be a sponge versus like quickly like clicking skip on your Spotify. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
It's like being in a band for years, like you start to listen to music differently instead of like actually listening as you used to enjoy. It's like more like it becomes a library and you're trying to like pick out things that you could use instead, like,
yeah. I think a really formative moment for me that like, and this doesn't need to necessarily, sometimes it's not just music. Sometimes it's being able to pull things from other parts of your life and being able to put it into your music. Because I used to be a really big fan of this band called Vanna. And, back in the, the late 2000s when like bands would do like tour update videos and post them on their YouTube, like, and that was like really common. They were calling out the Ghost Inside because they're like, we know how you guys do your breakdowns. You're just listening to you're just listening to video game music and then taking the rhythm progressions and writing that. And I was like, what do you mean? And then they like played the last breakdown in Provoke, which is I think off the first Ghost Inside record, and it's literally just the Mario theme song. It's like dun 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 dun. I was like, what? You could write like, so that opens up the potential where it's like, if you hear, just like even just a progression through a jingle or like someone saying it on a meme even, like who's to say you can't like pump that into your music and almost have that as a little Easter egg to some of your, to what you're doing, right?
Absolutely,
Exactly.
man.
Yeah,
And even emotion too. If you're going through some stuff in life, you know, like whether it's good and bad, that's definitely a lot of like powerful things you can put into your guitar or
totally.
your music. Like,
Yeah, because even just on the songwriting, like the lyric aspect, like I think, there's the tried and true, topics that hardcore bands will cover, but like I think it's really cool for bands to cover, topics that are like a little bit more specific to them. So whether it's like, working a retail job and how much you hate it to like, anything else, I think it's really what I love about heavy music as a whole is the no rules mindset when it comes to, there's definitely like inspiration and quote unquote roadmaps that you can take, but like, the fact that a band like Vatican is as big as they are and they like pump so much video game like influence into their band and their overall like brand as a whole, I think that is really, really, really cool.
mhm.
So, I'll use that as a segue into Trench. So you guys just put out a new single super, super recently, did a really crazy music video. And, your guys' vibe definitely has that like, we were talking about like the green and all of that. And so I love the whole whoever like did the color grading as far as like keeping it black and white, but only showcasing some of the green as well. So maybe you can talk to me a little bit about what went into the video itself. When like I alluded at the top of the show, I think you guys actually like, showed us some of the behind the scenes when we were recording, but that was like almost, that was like a while ago. So like, tell me how long this has been in the hopper, I guess, and waiting to come out.
We shot the video
We shot it in winter.
in November last year.
Yeah, we wanted it to snow, and it was cold.
Yes.
The day that we even shot it too, it was like lots of snow and freezing Canadian temperatures, but very worth it because we were burning a massive fire. It was like the fire was legit made out of a house.
Right.
So
yeah, burning the fire when it's like plus 20 degrees, that's a recipe for disaster.
oh yeah,
It was still like
yeah, we accidentally set the stage
like 10 feet away from this thing, and we thought that was like a safe
enough.
distance.
Every time we shot, we had to, at least I had to jump into the snow right after like it was like cut,
like full-blown snow angels.
Yeah, we started smelling plastic burning, rubber burn, all that stuff. So we had to shift everything forward and then shoot again. And then the fire got even bigger
and even hotter. So we only got like 3 takes.
Yeah, so we're like, oh my goodness, like let's quickly cool off and then quickly get one more in before everything burns.
Right. So how many takes did you guys end up getting with like the quick changeovers and having to reset in the snow? Like, because normally, like as someone who has shot a couple music videos for bands, it's like I'm trying to get as many takes as I can to get the golden nuggets from each take. But like, you're working with a lot of different elements, so I'm kind of curious on how many takes you guys actually got in.
For the fire shoot, like we only got 3 takes in. Like,
damn,
it was a song, like, and it got to the point where it's like, do you have enough? Because like I don't know if we can do it. Like literally, like the leather on my 810 was like I could just rip it off no problem because it was so hot. And like the stage was so insanely slippery too. Like so we kind of had to like calm down on like a little bit of the movement and stuff.
Sure.
And cabs were like slowly bumping off because like the stage wasn't like perfectly, like stable.
Okay, so the vibrations were just like yeah. Man, that's crazy.
The fire shoot, we got like 3 takes, and then afterwards we had to set up in the barn, and that took like a couple hours. And then the barn shoot was like had all the acting in it, and then plus us playing in it, which we played that part like easily like 15 times or something like that.
Okay. Yeah. So it was like you definitely wanted that climactic aspect of like having the fire, but like not like you're all it seems like the music video itself is like very DIY. You don't have like a fire team who's like, making sure things are going on. You're like, all right, let's light it. Let's see how many takes we get in. And then we got to like make sure it's contained and not spreading or anything.
Dude, a guy that was driving on the side of the highway pulled in and he's like, is everything okay? Like, We just saw a huge fire on the side of the highway, and it was like 4 of us dressed super sketchy, like.
Oh, right. Yeah. Everyone's got the ski mask, and you're like, nothing to see here. We're literally just shooting a music video.
We're going out. Everything's all good. You could just turn around. And he's like, okay.
That's so funny. Yeah. I never thought of it that way, where it's like, you're doing something and then someone's like actually concerned, like, what is going on? And yeah. And especially when you're out, like in the, outside the city, where it's like people feel a little bit more obligated to do that, because it's like, if you're going to call the fire department, it would take like 30 minutes to get there or whatever it is. So it's like, I should figure out if everything's okay.
Yeah, we kind of had to do it then too, because like it was the only time they were sort of allowed, like there was a permit for it almost,
Oh, okay.
So as long as there was a snow there, then it kind of covered like the safety of everything.
Sure.
Like we did kind of have like a crew, thanks to like Rayleigh's family, and like they helped us out with like literally getting our gear like from like the barn to like the stage, and then bringing that stuff back, because that was like quite the distance too, because it's like a huge property, right?
Right. Yeah, it's so crazy, because it is one of those things where like like playing in front of a fire has been done by like so many bands, but like every single time like I see it, it is so sick. Like it's one of those like bucket list things to ever, like, if I ever get to do a video where I get to have like some moment where I play a chord and flames come behind me, that never loses its luster. It's so sick.
But we wanted to do like, let's squirt like gasoline on the cymbals, and then like
we all pretty much wanted to be on fire.
Yes. Yeah. Maybe that's the next trench video. Like everyone's just on fire the entire time. Yeah. New Damage. Send them some like, fire budget, and let's make it happen for some new stuff. So yeah, I was just gonna say, let's use that as the segue. So like, as far as the time we're recording this, it's only been like a week or so that you guys have just announced that you've signed a New Damage. So I haven't been able to formally congratulate both of you. So congrats on that. It's been really crazy to see the growth of Trench. Like I was saying earlier in the episode, like seeing you guys, even before Cole was in the band in 2016, and like that very first time, I'm like, okay, this band is doing something so like creative and in their own lane that like it's so noticeable. It's undeniable at that point. And then the fact that you guys have been able to like really establish the brand and the vibe and like what you guys are about. And like when I would always talk about like bands from Alberta that people need to pay more attention to, like Trench was always top of the list. And to see you guys have such a, to have a label to now back you it's super exciting. So I'm super proud of all you guys. So yeah, tell me about like, again, like all the music things, like, the music video was like shot at a year ago. Was the signing and the connection on that point kind of a similar timeline, or kind of more recent? Bring me behind the scenes on that.
It's like, I
want to say it was roughly the same time.
It was close to the same time as we filmed it, but it wasn't like, I don't know how much I could really say, but
no, you're fine. Yeah.
I just want to say that we were working,
like everything we had to do was for that.
Like we were working towards
it. Nothing was official yet, but it was just more of like, we're trying to build something to basically present.
Gotcha. So, yeah, you're like, we almost caught on fire for you guys. Like, let's make it happen. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like it was just about like it was in the works when we were doing that music video, and we were, regardless of the outcome, we still wanted to do the music video for us anyway. So like, it didn't matter about the or anything like that.
Like we were going to release it regardless, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it wasn't like, oh, I guess we'll just shelf it like and wait for the next thing. Like, as something as cool, like you guys had to sit on that for a long time, but like something as cool as that, you weren't gonna let a label essentially put or take the wind out of the Trench sails, so to speak.
Yeah.
So, talking about like the signing, you know, it's always funny because I talk with a lot of people that are based in the States, and when they talk about record labels in Canada and like who bands are signed to there, like New Damage is like only one of the few that comes to mind, but like, you know, they've been doing a lot in the last couple of years. I know like one of the more recent Alberta bands that got signed to them was Calling All Captains, which is more in that like pop punk kind of sphere. So like, what does that mean for you guys to be on a label of that size, especially considering like the length of time that you guys have been playing in bands?
Oh, it's we'd all kind of said like, regardless of what happens, it's not going to change us, you know,
Right.
like, and it shouldn't change us. If anything, it's just going to like help us do the things that we actually want to do and the things that we dream of doing, and it might make it more possible for that to happen instead of us like us basically doing all the work and stuff. I think, right?
I don't know. It's unreal to be like on the same label as Gob. Like
totally.
Just like we're on that caliber now of like of exposure. It's crazy to like, I don't know. I don't think there's any other label in Canada that we would rather be on. Like it's just and Misery Signals of us like growing up, like they were our heroes. So just, you know, it's mind blowing.
Yeah.
To be like the labels as them and stuff. It's like, yeah, it's definitely a dream come true for us. Like for all of this to happen, it's like a serious big dream come true for us.
Totally. Yeah. And I think the thing that I guess I asked that question to kind of tie back to what I was saying earlier is like some people, I'm seeing new kids get into this sphere and they have high expectations right out the gate. They want to like put out a demo and be signed on Triple B, or like put out an EP that gets a little bit of attention and be on Flat Spot or Close Casket or whatever it is. And, you know, I'm seeing bands get their quote unquote dream like label signing or whatever based off at like almost at least 10 years of like putting out record after record, playing in band after band. So I think that is like so crucial to like play the long game with a lot of this and like really be around the block multiple times to be like, and also I think that just goes into like your songwriting as a whole. Cause I'm sure like the stuff you're writing for like the Fallacy and some of your other bands in the past, at the time you're like, this is the best shit I've ever written. And then you're at this point, you're like, no, we're actually at that point where we're writing the best stuff that we can. And even 10 years from now, like it just continually grows. So like it goes into the question of like, would you have actually been ready to like get a New Damage signing when you were playing in bands like 5-10 years ago? Like at least if it was saying it for me, I would probably say, you know, with some of my bands, I'm like, I don't want any of those going out on a label of any kind.
I would say everything that we've ever done music wise, we would try to make it like as best as possible and have it kind of like, if it did ever reach to us and be like, oh my God, this is like how it should be, right?
Totally.
Brain farting here.
It's
like being in like other bands, like it teaches you the way that you start communicating when you're in other projects and stuff. Like the way that you communicate is, I think, is so important of like how song is being written, the way that you have your like the way you open your mind to like certain things too is like super important. And I think without us being all in these previous bands, like it like basically trained us to be to where we are right now.
That's
right?
it.
Like
that's 100% it. Yeah.
Like not saying that like we couldn't do it back then, but it's just when you start like doing things over and over again and nothing's happening, you got to start like really recognizing where the mistakes are, right? And like Trench wouldn't be Trench without literally all like the band members that we have, and we're very blessed to have like everyone that picks up each other's weaknesses, and then like everyone that has their strong points like help each other with that, right? And like just communicating super different, and like all of us, the fact that like every single one of us favorite band is like completely different from each other, that's also like hugely important, you know. So we're not just being like, let's just be a Slipknot band, you know, like Like, no, you want to do Slipknot, I want to do Beatles stuff. He wants to do like, turnstile stuff. I don't know. And with that kind of stuff, it introduces like it changes the way that you write songs, and like Bryce would come up with riffs and stuff, and like the last thing I really want to do on my bass is like play exactly what he's playing, right? So like me growing up listening to Anti-Flag and Rancid, and those guys were like, and Cliff Burton are like my three favorite bassists, right? They taught me to like kind of break the realm of just like playing the same thing that they're playing, right? It's like noodling on like a bass is way more fun than just like do. But sometimes you actually have to like do what, because you're limited, right? But
Tommy, what do you think?
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say, like, so if like a label signing got offered like back in like say like the Fallacy days, like back then, it's like our focus was just to like write stuff that we really liked, and if it got any attention, like that's super sweet. And then as we're writing stuff that we liked to play, and other people started getting noticed, like the people that you meet end up helping you a lot to get as big as you can possibly get.
Right.
And like at that time, there's only like a couple people in the band that could really like handle that type of like, like I would call it even business, like to handle being consistent with like,
sort of doing like understanding the workload and what actually goes into it.
Exactly. And then with French, it's like we legit like so blessed to have like the greatest team, because some of the guys in there they've grown up like knowing how to deal with like business like type things, and like creative things too, and like everybody they're so talented that like we combine it all into one thing. It's not a huge workload for as a band. It's like it like works out equally for everyone, because everyone knows how to like handle it,
Totally.
So like it's kind of worked out better than now, because like everybody is just like, whoa, like this isn't anything like shoved in our face that we can't handle or deal with, right? It's we're ready for this at this point. And then Fallacy would have been like, oh man, are we ready for this? Like, I didn't expect this to happen, and not saying that Trench wasn't expecting this to happen, but if it did happen, we're like, okay, let's take it in and embrace it, because we're ready. We feel like we're ready,
Yeah.
And then back then it's just like, oh man, can we really make this happen? And can we do it?
I think like, talking with a couple friends now that like run a lot of the, the behind the scenes aspect of a lot of the music business stuff, is like a crazy opportunity handed to a band that, like you said, like is inexperienced, doesn't, are they actually ready for that? That can really like make or break some bands, because like some bands might just like default into saying yes. And I think that there is some, you should chase, if your ambition is to be like touring as much as possible, like try and say yes to as many opportunities as you can. But if you're like, if things on the back end aren't like in place for you to do that, like you could do like 2 months of touring, or even a year's worth of touring, and then your band breaks up because like you haven't learned how to like be together for that long of time, or like have things in your home life set up where it's like, okay, I'm gonna be gone for 2 months, like, and it's not gonna be like I come back and like my partner hates me, I had to like find a new job. Like there's all these like things that we just think of touring and like playing in bands as like this, we go out and everything is fine, but there's like so many things to work out on the back end, and making sure that you're ready for that when the time is to take the leap, right?
Yeah. And back to what I was saying too, is that like, after the Fallacy, and we had like that little moment before Trench, when we started Trench, it was like, well, is this just going to be a band that we're just going to jam in our 30s or whatever? Like, are we just going to be like those older guys that are just jamming for fun? Or are we going to like, or we could try and see if we can make this more than just like a jamming band, right? So it's not just like, because all of us have been in so many bands before, and it's just like, is this just going to be one of the other ones that we just like to play shows and then like here and there, and like meet up as friends or whatever? Or are we gonna like
go for it? Yeah,
just see if we can make this the last like thing we can do before we're old and we can't do it anymore, right?
Right.
So
yeah, and I've been like thinking and learning from some people that I am now friends with who are like more into their like late 30s or 40s even, who are still playing in bands, and it's like there's no shame in like being a really solid like local band that doesn't tour and doesn't really go outside of its pockets.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like I think you need that diversity within any scene. You need you need the kids and the people in the bands that are like going out and putting your town or city on the world map. Like I think Stepping Stone did such a great, like when they were touring all the time, I feel like they were doing that so much for like Saskatchewan as a whole, but like Western Canada, like I think they were one of those bands that was really like pushing it out and like really flying that flag. But going back to what I said, like a band that just wants to play their province or their state, or maybe do a little weekend thing because like half the band is in really high professional careers, or their dads or moms or whatever it is. Like I think there's no shame in that. I think that they're just coming back from promcore, like there are bands that only play promcore that aren't even bands anymore. Like there's bands that are like, we are just about our community, even though we're not going out and being the crazy band around the world. So I think I think it's really sick there.
Yeah.
So for you guys, like when Trench started, was the mindset of like, okay, let's give it one more go? Or was that like more after the first couple of years of like, oh, I think that there's something here, so maybe let's put more chips on the table? I'm kind of curious on where was the mindset, let's go all in at the beginning, or did that come later on?
It was later for sure. Because in the beginning, we were still in an indie band, but the indie band was kind of like there were like differences in writing, and I kind of was missing listening and writing heavy music. And then like Jay and Bryce were like, "Hey, what do you think about playing music like this?" And we're like, "Oh my god, 100% down." And then
so do you need a bass player?
Yeah, I know a guy. And and then when it first started out, we're like, "Okay, this is like fun to do." Like it's bringing back all the old memories of like loving playing heavy music and stuff like that. And then eventually, like that was like in indie music just kind of worn off, and then we're back to like playing heavy metal. And then when Cole joined and the stuff that we were writing, we were like, dude, this stuff is like we're like loving everything that we're writing, and people seem to be digging it too. And that's when it was kind of like, okay, like I think we got something here, like maybe we like start pushing it. But that definitely came later on,
right?
Yeah,
and I've heard it on the podcast before. Like other guests have come on and we talk about how the ambitions of a musician can change throughout their time in a band. They could come out the gate being super like want to do everything, and then over time they're like, you know what, I think for this project I just want to play regionally, or I just want to play locally, or I just want to play once a year. So like this goes back a little bit, but when I was playing in Extract, I think there was a time where we could have gone out and done a lot, and then Hope was like, you know what, I think Extract is like a once a year kind of band, because he was doing his own music stuff for Viva Non and really pushing time and energy into that. But for him, and I don't want to speak for him exactly, but I think from my perspective it seemed like, well, at the very least I can like scratch the hardcore itch at least once a year and people will go crazy, versus like trying to do it bi-weekly or whatever it is. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So so when it comes to kind of what's happening with Trench right now, you guys have played like one show since being back. So it seems like as soon as winter kind of happens in Canada, people kind of shut down, because like no one is going to try and rip, especially right now with like all the shit that's happening in BC. No one's trying to do a weekend thing in Vancouver right now, nor can you. So, what is kind of like for fans of the band, like obviously I'm like, we talked at the top of the show, like there's not a ton that you can kind of say what's going on, but like, what are you excited for as far as like, and what can Trench fans be excited for kind of going into 2022, and what you're excited to get your hands in the dirt, so to speak?
Okay. Oh man, it's just like 20 2022 is going to be a exciting one for us. It's like the year of us being on New Damage and this stuff that we never expected that could happen, like, so
Right.
that's kind of where we're at right now, and there's a lot of things that will be happening for sure.
Yeah, like y'all can definitely be expecting some more music coming your way. Like I think next year I made a joke about it being called the year of 22er. But we also don't know, right? It's just what I think might happen. I actually have no idea. So
right. Yeah.
I'm hoping, because I miss touring so much. Like that's my favorite thing to do, right? So
right. So yeah, no. So I think one of the next things that we can kind of hit on, I think it's very and just correct me if I'm wrong. Are you guys identical twins or just twins?
Identical.
Okay. Saying that at the exact same time. I love that. So sorry, what was that?
I just said same but different.
Same but different. I love that. Actually, before I ask you guys this next question, I'm just gonna. It seems like the dogs are passed out, but I just want to make sure everyone's good. So, Jordan, can you mark at 50 minutes that I checked the dogs? So I'll be back in like one minute, and then we'll jump into some of those things.
Yes, boss. Whatever. Dog check.
This feels like a job. I'm so nervous.
Almost.
I'm so scared. I'm like borderline saying things I shouldn't say. Like, oh no.
We can also go back and just if you guys want to give this a re-listen, because we're trying to get the podcast set up now where it's like I can sit down and do an interview, and then by the time we're wrapped up, we can just slap audio to it and render it out. So even if you guys want to listen to it private or send it to Curtis or the rest of the guys, we can do that if you want to.
Yeah, okay. I wouldn't mind just in case,
in case.
They're oh no, doesn't keep that on the DL or whatever. So.
Yeah,
we're trying so hard.
No, you guys are doing great.
I know it's so hard not to try to tell you everything.
No, it's I totally understand it. So, so to go back to the question I was asking before we had to break. So, I know very few bands that have, siblings in the band. But then it's the funnel goes a little deeper as far as just twins in the band, and then there's the even smaller funnel with identical twins. So was that when you guys were getting into it? It sounds like you guys both had individual paths, but there was some kind of crossover as well. Because I always feel like most brothers or brother and sisters or sisters will there's the stages when they're growing up where it's I can't stand you, and then over time you grow to you're you grow really close with them, and everyone's got different family dynamics. But I was kind of curious if going back, even when you guys were growing up, did you imagine that you guys would be as close as you are, because you guys are clearly tight knit at the hip, but being and doing all these band stuff and the recording and the chants and all that, could you even imagine that when you guys were that small?
To be honest, we fed off each other. It was no matter, we almost knew that no matter what we did music wise, we were always, it was gonna be involved with both of us together.
Sure.
And it'd be hard for me to even be a band without him in it at all.
When Tom was living in Vancouver and Fallacy had fill-ins, when we played Architects with Den Divine at Gateway, Tom was in Vancouver and we had a fill-in, and it was just Shane was an amazing drummer, but it just didn't feel the same. And that having that kind of I guess I don't want to say emotional, but maybe emotional connection. It was just I think if I didn't have that, I probably wouldn't be doing it, to be honest. It's a weird, different kind of connection where, we do feed off each other, and like we can almost like phase in each other's like emotions and then like project it on our music together, and like it kind of helps. Like, yeah, we've always been kind of on the same level, but like pushing each other when it comes to different things, and we're not afraid to say anything to each other, right? So
yeah, I've played drums for other bands before without Tony being in the project or anything, and like that's cool. But like if I were to do something full time, it's like he would have to be in it, because I would just feel bad if I was like, we both literally have the same dreams and like goals of everything, and it would suck if he was at home working and I was like in another band and was like, oh hey, I'm just in like Australia playing with Parkway Drive, like how's everything going? Like,
right.
So it would be such a huge bummer. But yeah, like ever since we were a kid, it was like we almost knew that like my sister actually started playing drums, and then that's how I got into it. She showed me how to play my first drum beat, and then ever since then it's like I'm so hooked. Like drums look so cool, and guitar is fun, but it's nice to just hit things hard and make music at the same time. And then Tony was like, oh, I like, there's this, you like this music, right? I can learn these songs. And then that's how we just kind of kept jamming, and then found buddies that were totally down to do the exact same thing. And yeah, there's a depth. And the crazy thing, like being twins too, it's like we like can, when we're playing live, we can mess up at the exact same time and come back on time at the same time. Like we it's so weird. It's like,
or then everyone else questions if they fucked up or not. It's like, oh, we were on time.
Yeah, there's definitely some weird twin connections where I'm like, you're like, in my mind I'm like, you're playing too fast, I'm trying to catch up with you, and then I'm like,
right. Wow, I would have never even like, I'm sure there's moments of sets that I've filmed of you guys where those have happened, but I haven't caught it. But you guys are like, oh yeah, definitely missed that hit, or like definitely was rushing there or whatever. But it seems so weird that there's like this almost like a spiritual connection between you guys with like the music itself. That is so crazy.
Yeah, it made me appreciate too. Like I get stoked when I see bands that have like family in them as well, and like Thrice, and like it's just
Good Charlotte, we're like and
Troll. Like, yeah, Asian Tegan and Sarah over here, like we're very lucky, man. Like being on the road too is like so nice to feel to actually like experience all the stuff that we're doing together, and like having family like with me, like it just makes it so much better. I feel very lucky to be able to even do that, right? Like
totally. Yeah. So, I feel like it's very clear that there's tons of similarities between both of you guys, like both loving heavy music, playing in bands together, arguably like can play similar, like both can play guitar. There are so many things, but I am curious if there's any differences between the two of you that are like, so like there's no way that we can ever agree on this thing. I'm curious if there's any of those. And that could go anything from like bands to types of food, like favorite car, like anything that comes to mind. Like because you're both your individual persons. It's not just like copy paste.
Yeah, it's super rare. There's like really small things, like he likes cucumbers and I'm not a big fan of cucumbers, like that was always a thing. Like I need pickles rather than cucumbers.
Oh, like, interesting.
So, some like really random like that, or
plants. Sometimes he'll like different kind of plants, and I'm like, I'm not vibing that plant. So
we both like plants, but like we got our own favorites and least favorites.
Yeah, and growing up, we had to work things out. It's like when we were watching Power Rangers, that's how I like got my favorite color green. I was like, dude, the guy's name's Tommy, like, and he's like the most badass character ever. Like, he's easily, that's my favorite color for sure. And then I was like, okay, if I take green, you can't buy green shirts or like green hats, okay? Like that's my stuff. And then growing up, I've ever seen him wear like a green shirt or something. I'm like, that should be my shirt. Like, or we're going shopping together. Like, no, man,
you don't wear like red hoodies. Come on, like.
Was that one of the origins of like introducing the color green into trench? Because I remember when Cole kind of came into the mix, like he talked about the establishing that and how like that was such a crucial turning point for you guys. But is that where the seed was? Does it go all the way back to Power Rangers?
No. That was definitely like I think we all really liked. Well, we all liked green, and then when the idea was brought up, I think it was even Evan that said that. Like he just like, I think you guys should be like a green band.
Yeah.
Because we were all about like,
I like green. I don't care. So
you don't have to tell me twice.
Exactly.
Yeah. It is funny because anytime you guys do a merch drop, I feel like you guys have no duds. It's always like I always expect there to be green, but the fact that you guys play on different things, so I think it's always sick. But do you guys feel trapped a little bit in that where it's like, oh, like I kind of would like a color in this way, or you're like, no, everything is green all the time?
I mean, I personally don't feel like it. There's so many types of greens out there, and nature's full of green, and there's just endless. It's just
but at the same time, if we ever went like a total 180 or something, then I think
we're not opposed to anything else too.
Yeah, we're definitely not opposed to experience stuff, and that's the great thing about these guys is like we're always down to just be as weird as possible and try to experiment with like just some next level shit. Like I never liked using guitar pedals until Bryce was in the band, and I was like, man. Crap, now I have to like worry about like all these chords. What happened if I cut out? How do I determine like what's cutting out my sound? And then it's like, but then eventually you learn the ways of it, and it's like, wow, like now I feel like I'd be naked without pedal boards, right? Like,
yeah. What's like? I think Bryce had mentioned some kind of really key guitar pedal on his setup. So I'm kind of curious because it's always funny because you expect bass players just to have a tuner and like a fuzz pedal or a rat or something, but it's like you guys actually have like you have more pedals than I do on my board. So do you have any go-tos or ones that you really like?
Question. So Bryce's favorite pedal is probably the freeze pedal.
Yes.
And like the way that he used it, because like I was just like, really, like how could you use a freeze pedal in like songwriting? And then he showed me and I was like, oh my God. And then I felt like I was officially in trench when he gave me the freeze pedal. And then when Cole joined the band too, it was official when he got a freeze pedal, and it was like, dude, that's like kind of it's like Slipknot with their mask, but
right. But it's an electronic harmonics freeze pedal. That's so funny. It's like, welcome.
No, exactly.
Put on your jackets. It's about to get cold. Jamming.
Yeah.
With this,
Man, that is so funny. Yeah, the freeze pedal. I have one of those, and it's definitely been utilized very much so since I got it. So one thing I wanted to bring up, because I remember I can't remember if this was on Cole's podcast or he told me afterwards, but you guys have a thing called Trenchmas. And I think as far as when this episode will come out, like, really around the holidays. So do we want to keep that like a little bit of a secret thing as far as like how much that happens, or are you guys down to talk about that?
Oh yeah, dude.
It's like, it's just like a way that we always, it's like instead of being like coworkers all the time, we can actually like celebrate on our accomplishments. It's good to get together. Like we get each other's gifts and like remembers that we're still bros before this stuff, right? Like
we're all best friends, man. It's like this never feels like just jamming. We hang out more. We almost hang out more than we jam when we actually supposed to jam.
Right.
Like, and yeah, Trenchmas is just a thing for us to do all our favorite things together and celebrate something that like we don't really celebrate Christmas with our family anymore, and we haven't celebrated Christmas in our family in like a long time. And then, but I love Christmas, right? So like I get to do that with like Trench, and there's nothing better of us just all hanging out. We do stuff like that all the time. Like we'll get together and checking out breweries and stuff like that, or like even just traveling together, like
making food for everyone, and like just a random band practice, just like
totally
create good vibes, and like I think that's like super important too, is just like creating a really good vibe before you enter into like a creative situation.
Well, and if anything, like creating that solid foundation allows for all the creative stuff to just flow so naturally versus trying to force it. Like it's been so apparent to me that you guys are such like an actual family, like, or band of brothers. As like corny as that sounds, it like really resonates. Like when I look at Trench and all the members, and I think it's just so cool that you guys like really put that as like an essential part of the Trench process versus like trying to be the loudest and the craziest band. Like you're like that comes with just a solid foundation that we build behind the scenes almost, and not out of like we're gonna be friends so we have a good band. It's like we're just great friends that makes a great band at the end of the day.
Yeah. And love constantly keeps growing for each other as like things are happening and stuff, and like it just, and we all been through like similar situations. So like on tour, it's like it's so nice that like if we do have a night where we have to like sleep on the floor or something, it's like we all can like cooperate with each other or sleep in the van or whatever. Like
there's no fighting.
Yeah, I think like
just rarely ever fighting.
Yeah, we might have fought like once out of the entire time we've been in a band together. And
right.
Like, that's pretty mind blowing in my opinion, because like just basic experience, like you usually have a lot of people, at least like just butting heads is always a thing, right? Whether it's writing music or just like planning a band practice and stuff, it's like there's usually butting heads, and like we're very like it's actually so weird that like when Trench started that it's like it's been so smooth sailing that it's like sometimes you're just like, is this actually real? Like how are we so tight? How is it like so perfect? And like we'll never take that for granted for sure. Like I
totally. So yeah, like did you guys get to celebrate Trenchmas last year? Because it was like, pandemic stuff was kind of still happening, and like it is still happening now, but like there's new things at play. So I'm kind of curious if like this one feels a little bit more special because last year was a little questionable, if that makes sense.
It was all online. It was all online last night or last year, but even then it was still sweet that we still wanted to get together,
right?
And online was as good as it was going to get,
right?
But yeah, we're just like, as soon as we were able to get back together after like that whole isolation period with COVID or whatever, how like no one could see each other, like we were so pumped. We didn't even want to jam because we were just so stoked to like see each other. We're like, again. Oh my god, let's go to the backyard, let's get some snacks
instead of seeing the screen. Like it was so nice.
Totally. So
it's nice to touch you. Like
it's just I know one thing that I think I've heard through Cole and through Jay is that like it seems like a tradition, not just for Trenchmas, but for band practices in general, to like, I remember like I was going to the liquor store and Cole was walking out with a bottle of wine. I'm like, oh, hey, how's it going? He's like, good. I'm on my way to band practice. And he had like, it seems like it's tradition for someone to bring some kind of wine or something like that. And you guys just like hang out and do that. So I'm really curious because I'm always a fan of bands doing collabs that are outside of the norm of what you would expect in the metal or hardcore space. So like what in your opinion would be the perfect Trench wine collab that you guys would do? Sky's the limit.
Like flavor wise, you would say? Like
flavor wise, brand, packaging, like let's brainstorm a little bit.
Oh my goodness.
It would definitely have to be a red wine of some sort. Like Cole's a big fan of the Cabernet. I like the Merlots.
I like both.
If we could, and then like if we could find a combo of that together and plus make it a little bit bubbly.
Oh, okay. So like a sparkling red, of some kind. But it, like, would you add some dye to make it like green or like?
I was just thinking, I think that'd be so cool. Instead of red wine, it's green wine, like
like the nodes and the taste is definitely red, but it's like the presentation is green.
Yeah. I think that'd be super dope.
Mm-hmm.
And then packaging probably just either again. I don't know. I think like an engraved kind of bottle. It's like
okay.
Great. Like
I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but it'd be funny that because we all love smoking weed, and if it looked like a joint, well, as you're drinking it, you kind of look like you're just smoking or like a red wine bottle.
Like we made a joke one time. We were on a drive and like,
Oh my god.
we should make like trench air fresheners. And then I was like asking Cole's like, oh, what do you think it should smell like? He's like, weed. I was like,
it's like a air freshener that makes your vehicle smell like you hotbox without actually hotboxing.
yeah,
Exactly.
That's so funny. Yeah, like I don't think you're getting in trouble for saying that, Tommy. I just think that visual is hilarious. Like,
just like,
yeah, maybe the bottle kind of doubles as like a bong once you finish the wine.
Okay, there we go.
Yo,
we're going somewhere.
now we're getting somewhere. I love to be able to do these things, like whether it's like crazy merch ideas or whatever, that if the odd chance one of them actually happens, I can just clip this part of the podcast and like put their announcement video for wherever that is at the end. So maybe in 2022, 23, 24, there's a bong green red trench wine in the future. So we'll have to see.
Oh
like
yeah.
trench has like we call it a trench roll. Like when we have this every trench miss. It's like, so Bryce is pretty like known for like doing crazy combos when it comes to food.
Very
like,
creative.
yeah,
Oh, okay.
like if you get like a like the lumberjack slam at Denny's, whatever, he's the one making like a crazy breakfast sandwich out of it, right? So like at Trench Miss, we made a thing called trench roll, and literally it's just like a dill pickle chip and like cheesy macaroni salad with a little bit. You put that on the chip, and then you put some like diced tomatoes, and then some green onions, and that's a trench roll right there.
I love that. That just sounds like something that I would just maybe not myself eat, but watch other people eat. You know? That's hilarious. Well, guys, this has been a really, really great chat. We can start to wrap up the episode. The last portion of the podcast, as I'm sure you're familiar with, probably listening to a couple of these, is a favorite mosh story that you would like to share. And I always like to do, I primarily like to do one-on-one podcast interviews, but when I get to do like two or multiple people, it's like, oh, now the mosh stories at this point in the show, they can just go on and on. So because we started with Tony, how about you start when it comes to mosh stories? So again, that could be anything that's first your mind, could be you, could have happened to you, could have happened at a show you were playing or just attending, whatever, wherever you want to go with that.
Okay, so I've always been like on and off about like just the whole hardcore dancing, because I just feel like I don't personally get it, but
Okay.
but I feel like it's kind of what you have to do if you're like gonna get into it, So like the first time I ever went in, like stepped inside the pit, was watching Atreyu at Warped Tour like or something. And they played X's and O's, and I was just like, oh, I need to go in here. Literally 2 seconds of just even swing, I get like booted, and then I'm like, okay, like cool. And then like being in like a pit of like like the casualties, like circle pit, like that was like super scary, and like you just instantly get like hit like 5 times, but like you almost like want to get hit sort of thing. And then bleeding through, I moshed there, but that was like the only times I ever moshed, aside from like when Act Fast played at Wild Rose. I stepped out of retirement for that.
Oh, I'm sure a lot of people stepped out of retirement for that one.
But
yeah, I feel like that set was a lot more of like pileups than like the aggressive crowd kill of any kind. Like Act Fast and crowd killing don't mix, in my opinion. But yeah, no, that's really funny. It's funny. I feel like there's some videos on the internet of like Warped Tour moshers, and some of it is like really like hard to watch at times. Just people coming out of the woodwork to do Warped Tour, and it's like a lot of the time you're moshing on the ground, so it's not like a level, and then it's like raining one day and you're just like slushing around in the mud. So I commend anyone who has been a Warped Tour mosher ever in their life.
And I remember before stepping in there, I had to like even ask like my homie Jesse, and be like, yo, so how do you do this? And he's just like, just pretend you're beating something up. Like, eventually you start doing the lawnmower machine, like, I don't know.
Yeah, there's like the pickup change, there's the windmill, there's the my personal favorite one right now is, I'm calling it the Beyblade, and it's when you have your one hand and then it kind of like forces your momentum, and then you actually just spin like you've just been ripped and you're ready for battle. So that's my personal favorite. Tommy, for mosh stories for you, where does your mind go?
Oh man. Okay, well, it's funny that I didn't even know that was Tony's mosh story, because that actually almost like the exact same thing happened to me, in which I was like, I was going to hardcore shows and I was like seeing like all this like hardcore dancing, and I was like, hey, I want to try it, and this will be where I actually try it. And then Treyu, it was the same thing with the Treyu too. He was probably not even next to me, and I tried two-stepping, and then like the third two-step, I got knocked down right to the floor, and I was like, "Oh, I'm never doing this again." Like, I clearly don't know my surroundings, and I don't know what happened, but I just feel like this is not my thing. But this is kind of not a mosh story, but sort of is. But like, this was so at AFI. I was when AFI came to Calgary, it was them, Poison the Well, and somebody else opening, like super stacked lineup at Mac Hall, and I was like third row from like the bar closest to the stage. And after waiting for AFI, they were taking forever to come in, and like the crowd just starts pushing like forward and then like left, like, but mostly forward. And I was surrounded by like tall people, so I was like breathing in like CO2 around me, just like people's breath. And it's literally been like 15 minutes of people trying to push forward, and I couldn't like stand it anymore. I was like, I can't take it anymore. Like, I'm actually suffocating. So I got like security to be like, hey, can you like pull me out here or whatever? And he was like, yeah, no problem. So he pulls me out. It takes me out to the front. I lose my shoe as he's pulling me out. And then as soon as I make it to the back of the stage, AFI comes on. And I'm like, oh, I can't even like try to go to the front because I'm only wearing one shoe, and I'm going to get like broken foot if I even try it. So that was like a story where I was like, oh, I should have just waited like 2 more minutes, and then everything would have been fine.
The crazy thing about that AFI show is that this was before Fallacy days, and Davey went on to the crowd and like was singing like his knees was like we were all holding him up, and next thing you know, me, Tom, and like 2 members of the Fallacy holding before we even met each other.
No, it was
holding.
It was Trench.
No, it was Todd and Shane. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe you're right.
So, and that was just really cool to find out, like later on, like when we talked about that story, it's like, what, you guys also held Davey too? That's crazy.
Right. Yeah, that's so funny. Yeah, to be able to like, that's one of my favorite things in hardcore is that you can like have like all of these paths are constantly crossing with like tours, and you know like a lot of the times like when I go down and film a fest, it's like I don't have all this free time to just like mingle with people and be like, hey, what's up? I'm Spencer. I'm from Canada. It's like I'm just like rushing to the next set and like making sure things are running. So a lot of the times, like my friendships only start after I put the set out, and people are like, oh, you were at that show? That's crazy. And then it's like kind of those things. So I love to be, you know, connecting the dots with like, I think even with Cole coming on the podcast and we were talking about like Horizons, I was like, oh yeah, I saw you guys when you were on like the Final Means tour. He's like, oh, that's crazy. And that goes all the way back to like 2008 of all places. So yeah, I think it's really, really crazy. And I think it's even funnier that like both of you at Atreyu Warped Tour, maybe you guys are getting hit in the face at the same time. You're like, yeah, no moshing for either of us. Well, Tony and Tommy, this has been really, really fun. You know, I've said it multiple times, but like because you guys are, and I don't just say it because you guys are here. Like I really respect both of you and what you do musically, but just how you carry yourselves as people. I've been a big fan of Trench and just you guys as in general. Like even before I moved here, so like I can't say enough good things about you or Trench. So I really appreciate you making some time for me and coming on the show to chat about the band and what you guys have done musically, and very excited for where you guys are going in the future.
Oh man, thank you so much. Thank you so much, man. Like I think what you're doing is amazing too. Like when we used to play like Supernova shows like back at Gateway, like it was amazing to just have like anyone film you. So I love that you just kind of stepped in that scene and just started filming people. And like if any band that I would start would be super stoked to have like to be able to watch my set again, you know, without even like being asked to like if you could film, right? Like it's just so nice to be able to rewind and watch sets and stuff. And you get to learn a lot when you watch people's sets. So I think what you're doing is really awesome. This whole interview thing, get to know like actual people in the scene, like band members. I think it's so cool to like dig inside, get to like really know what happens about just not just being in a band. It's not all like bells and whistles all the time, you know. It's
Right.
like you get a good background story. I think what you're doing is really good for that, exposing people to that kind of stuff.
I really, really appreciate that, and I have felt that support from you guys ever since I started Scope. So I really appreciate you guys, being about it and writing for me in that way. All of the Trench and your guys' personal links will be in the description of the video and in the show notes. But if there's anything that you want to end the people off with, the floor is yours.
I would just say
thanks for always supporting me, my brother, regardless of what project it is, and thank you so much for, like supporting Trench. Like
big things coming up next year for Trench, 2020 tour potentially. So that's what we're hoping for.